Isn't that just a really nice jazzy piece? It's Bob Acri. The piece is titled Sleep Away. I find it to be very relaxing. It's enjoyable, and it's a great way to get this podcast started. For this podcast, I'm going to talk about storytelling. Storytellers have been around for hundreds of years. They first began entertaining audiences around campfires. Later, the Greeks performed tragedies and comedies before larger audiences. And when the printing press made books available to people, storytellers, authors, began writing fiction for larger and larger audiences. So, what am I leading up to? Storytelling is a form of entertainment. And as I've said, it's been around for hundreds of years. Now evolved into, or become further refined, if you will call it that, into genres. So we have literary fiction, and we also have genre fiction. And genre fiction and literary fiction writers don't exactly see eye to eye. Probably literary fiction writers look down on genre fiction. So, whatever. So what? That's not the point here. The point is that both literary fiction and genre fiction are forms of entertainment. Now, literary fiction writers will probably disagree with me, stating that their work is art and a literary fiction writer's work searches for situations and emotions that can be lodged into some sort of interesting and original use of language. And I suppose literary fiction could also be splintered between literary fiction and mainstream fiction, which mainstream fiction uses situations and emotions common to a larger audience. But the literary fiction is different, I suppose, because literary fiction focuses more on character situations, character arcs, while a genre fiction, like sci-fi or fantasy, may focus more on a story plot and less on character. Without further deviation, regardless if you're reading literary fiction, mainstream fiction, genre fiction, this is all a form of entertainment that diverts or engages your attention from other things that you could be doing. You could be going to work, or you could be off the clock, and you've come home. You're going to cook a meal, or you're going to sit down and watch television, or you could sit down and read a book. And this book will divert your attention, and it will engage the reader. The book will engage the reader at some level of interest. If it's a genre book and it's plot driven, the book will engage the reader at an action with an action type focus. Whereas if the book is mainstream fiction, the reader's going to enjoy a more emotional experience. And if a reader is engaged by a literary fiction work, that reader's not only enjoying the book for the emotional context of the story, but also there's an intellectual interest in the book. There's a lot of reflection going on in the reader's mind. So a book can engage a reader at different levels. There are plot-driven stories, emotionally driven stories, and intellectually driven stories that challenge the reader, that may give a reader a new perspective of a scene or a situation, or even give that reader a new perspective on life. A literary work can have a profound impact on a reader. Reading a book is just as relevant today as reading a book was hundreds of years ago. Storytelling entertainment is just as relevant now as it was to people gathered around a campfire listening to that storyteller. And there's two reasons why this is so. Why is reading still relevant? I know we live in a technical in a world full of technology where we're bombarded with new electronic gadgets and new machines that find ways to engage us or to capture our attention. And these machines, while there's been many benefits by these advancements, where humans are now able to communicate to other humans across the globe. We're able to share ideas. We're able to see how other people live, and that's an amazing thing that technology has done for us. But at the same time, it's easy to become too engaged with technology. And when you think about it, technology really, the box itself is nothing but electrons, wires, and bits and pieces of plastic and metal. It's a machine. It's not the same as being engaged with a person or with a storyteller. When a person is engaged with a storyteller, there's a humanity. There's just something human about it that can never be replicated by a machine. The type of humanity that I'm talking about, the type of humanity in a story, is a human type, is a human logic that doesn't exist when a human interfaces with a machine. Now, a machine does have a type of logic. You have discrete gates. You might have digital gates, A or B. If A or B is true, then that gate may signal to a processor or something that there's a true signal, a particular voltage level that agrees with that processor, and so the processor knows to go and do something. But that's not the type of logic I'm talking about when it comes to storytelling and human logic. In storytelling, there's a type of logic that's built around an argument. So that when, let's say you're writing a piece of nonfiction, you're writing an argument of some sort, explaining your position as to why you think say McDonald's hamburgers are the best hamburger in the world. You write in your argument a key statement, and you build up that argument with more sentences to support that argument. That's a human thing. And to some extent, narrators, storytellers do the same thing. They're more or less arguing with the reader, trying to convince you that what's happening to the protagonist matters. A machine can't do that. A machine can't argue with itself. I mean, the closest thing to human logic that a machine might try to perform is some sort of fuzzy logic, or maybe there's new advancements in AI I'm not aware of, but right now this all seems to be anything AI related seems more speculation than reality at this point. Androids, I don't see anytime in the near future androids mingling in with local populations, and it's difficult for humans to tell the difference between another human and an android. If you dig deeper, or if you think more about what human logic is, there's an emotional underpinning to much of what people or humans argue for. So if I did write that nonfiction piece about why McDonald's hamburgers were the best hamburgers in the world, and I built my case for that, I'm sure there are people out there who would disagree with me for a number of reasons. They might disagree with me because it's a matter of how the burgers taste, or someone might say that McDonald's hamburgers are a health hazard, or whatever, for whatever reason, there are people out there who will disagree with me, and they too will build an argument. And it's a matter of one person trying to convince the other with some type of logic, building up their case with supporting sentences. And that's something a machine just can't do. A machine doesn't have an emotional underpinning, and a machine doesn't care if McDonald's hamburgers are good, if they taste good, or if they don't, or if they're bad for you, or if they're not bad for you, or whatever. All a machine could do would be able to, say, count the number of hamburgers produced by, you know, McDonald's in, you know, one McDonald's fiscal year or whatever. But that's not the same as human logic, and that's, you know, that the human logic is a humanity type thing, and that's why storytelling, this connection with a storyteller, is also a human thing, and just as relevant now, as I said before, as storytelling was relevant to people sitting around a campfire hundreds of years ago. What I've hoped to do in this podcast is maybe give you a new perspective of storytelling, maybe a new appreciation for reading a book, where, you know, while it's easy to be caught up or, you know, very engaged with a machine, it may be just as engaging, and I believe it's actually more engaging to become interested in reading a book, or, you know, listening to a storyteller, or going to see a play, or, you know, watching a movie. Well, you know, something like watching a movie, yeah, you're looking at a TV screen. Really, you know, it's you're also watching and listening to a storyteller. Whereas when you're, say, playing a video game, you're engaged in that type in that type of entertainment. That's a little more rules based. That's you know, that a game is a different form of entertainment, where while there may be a story in a video game, the story may not be as engaging at a human level as what a storyteller might be able to tell you, or what an author may be able to tell you in their book. And in fact, there's a lot of stories in video games that aren't really very good. They just really don't engage the player. But the player is willing to disregard the poor storytelling because, you know, the action of the game, the rules of the game, are enough to compel the player forward and to continue on into the game. I see a video game more like a machine type of activity, a rule-based activity, where I see a book or a movie or a play as being more of a human type of it. There's not much more I really can say about storytelling. So I'll wrap the podcast up, but as I've said before, I do hope that maybe I've given you a new perspective or a new way of looking at storytelling, and especially a new way of looking at books. I find books to be a wonderful form of entertainment, and books can also be intellectually stimulating. It just really depends on what you're looking for in a book. You know, you can. There's lots of entertaining genre fiction works out there. You can find at a bookstore, or Amazon, or anywhere else. And you know, there's lots of wonderful authors who have written lots of entertaining books. So, you know, with that said, I'll wrap this up, and I hope you've enjoyed what I've had to say. And until next time, keep reading and keep being human.